Wow. Buenas a todos. It is an honor to be here at Congreso Futuro 2025 to share with you all my views on energy and the future of energy in terms of the role that nuclear energy could potentially play in addressing climate change. Now, I know it's a little in the afternoon, and many of you may have just come from lunch, and I know all too well how that goes, but I'm going to have to ask that you muster some energy to stick with me for the next 15 minutes. Bueno, energy is the lifeblood of modern society. It powers systems with a ripple effect that shapes economies and critical components of daily life. The challenge is that humanity's predominant use of carbon-intensive energy sources have really put the Earth in a tough spot, with increasing intensity and frequency of extreme weather events, depletion of critical ecosystems, malnutrition in some countries, and increasing vector-borne diseases. But all isn't lost, because our innovation holds the solutions. The question is, can we come together to secure humanity's best chance at survival? Hola, mi nombre es Dr. Charlyne Smith. Soy ingeniera nuclear y científica at the Electric Power Research Institute. Oh, thank you so much. At the Electric Power Research Institute. Working on my Spanish. And I work at the Electric Power Research Institute, where I try to help to maintain the critical infrastructure or advance critical nuclear power infrastructure by leveraging innovation to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. So let's start with the basics of how does a nuclear reactor produce energy. Nuclear reactors use a process called fission to split an atom to release heat. That heat then creates steam. So we're going from water to steam, and then once we create steam, we use a turbine. A turbine is turned by the steam, and then we produce electricity. Now, nuclear power plants have been producing commercial power globally since 1957. So this is a highly mature, widely used technology. And some of these earlier plants still operate safely today, with the oldest plant being 55 years old in Switzerland. So in the 70s and the 80s, nuclear power really took off. And by the mid-80s, the world was commissioning about 30 gigawatts of nuclear power per year. Today, that's enough to power Chile's grid. Now, this is a lot of nuclear power. And while these reactors are producing highly radioactive, long-lived spent fuel, in terms of a quantity, it's a very manageable amount. So let's put this into context. If we took all the spent fuel from 60 years of nuclear power operation in the United States, all of that spent fuel could fit in Estadio Nacional, less than 10 meters deep. And even then, that spent fuel is an energy resource, because as France has shown for decades, we can use that spent fuel to produce more electricity through recycling. Today, 10% of France's electricity comes from recycled spent fuel. So for a time, nuclear power was viewed as a promising, clean, reliable source of energy. Then came the three major nuclear accidents of 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima. Now, all of these accidents had an were incredibly impactful on the nuclear power industry and the public psyche, and for a good reason. But when we take a step back to assess the causes of these disasters, highlighted in red here, we find that they could have been prevented. Now, I know you're probably wondering, who is this lady and why is she talking about nuclear power in Chile? Chile is a very seismically active area. But it might surprise you that nuclear power plants are designed and built to withstand earthquakes and other natural disasters. So when you design a nuclear power plant for a particular location, probabilistic seismic hazard analysis takes into account the earthquake history of the region, seismology, and geology. So in the case of the Tohoku earthquake that hit Japan in 2011, all the reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi plant automatically shut down as they were designed to do when the earthquake hit. The problem was that the emergency cooling systems meant to keep the reactors cool after shutdown was located in the basement. So what happened after the earthquake? After the earthquake, we know that the tsunami came. Because those cooling systems were in the basement, they were subsequently flooded. And so these reactors had no way of cooling themselves, and that's ultimately what led to the hydrogen explosion at Fukushima Daiichi. So historically, and still today, seismic analysis and guidance are constantly updated to maintain nuclear power plants' resilience against earthquakes. And that resilience extends to frequent weather events. We're talking flooding, lightning, extreme heat, extreme cold. And all of these events account for less than 0.1% of lost nuclear power generation. So let's look at where we are today. We've made immense advancements in renewable energy, where we've gone from virtually no renewable energy in 1994 to 16% of global generation. Fossil fuels have remained relatively stable, around 60%, and hydro, and nuclear in particular, have decreased in percentage. For nuclear specifically, the reason for that is that we stopped building nuclear power plants, and in some cases, we started to shut them down. So in effect, over the last 30 years, we've gone from having nuclear power supply 18% of the global share of energy to 8% today. But that's changing, because over the last year, there have been partly due to the AI boom, there's been a surge of nuclear announcements to bring nuclear power plants back online. Why? Because tech companies are racing to find clean, reliable energy to power their data centers. And you might be wondering, well, why are they looking at nuclear power to power their data centers? This is because nuclear power distinguishes itself because these power plants can run almost uninterrupted, continuously, with a capacity factor of more than 90%. And this is important for tech companies because they need 24/7 uninterrupted energy to support services like AI, streaming, and cloud computing. And if that sounds familiar, the need for 24/7 energy, it should. Because in Chile, mining is an industry that contributes a significant portion to the country's GDP. Mining, you're going to need 24/7 reliable energy. And so while for the tech sectors, they're considering nuclear power from a data center standpoint, the need for Chile is more so coming from the mining industry. And that creates a potential pathway for these small modular reactors, which I will talk about in a few slides, to be able to address the demand for the 24 energy need to power these mining sites. So let's talk more specifically about Chile's energy grid. Today, Chile meets its energy demand through a combination of renewables and thermal generation. Now, as you can see here, Chile is a world leader. And in my research before coming here, realized that Chile is in the top 10 countries for renewable build-out as quickly as Chile has. So renewables constitutes a large portion of Chile's energy grid. But as you can see here, in particular solar, it's not enough to cover the 24-hour load. And so you still need thermal generation at the top, even with some battery, which is expected to grow. So when we're talking about solar, solar produces energy during a specific time window when it's really sunny. So when you have a lot of energy, cheap energy, hitting the grid all at once, prices fall, sometimes to zero. And that's what happened in Cardones last year in September. Now, with this happening, it's hard to incentivize the energy industry to build more solar plants when the market is valuing their output at zero. So we have to get a little bit more creative on how we can supply the need for this 24/7 demand energy. And you think it's too daunting or maybe even impossible for a country that's new to nuclear to build a nuclear power plant. The United Arab Emirates showed that there was a pathway to building a nuclear power industry when they turned on their first nuclear reactor unit in 2021. It took them 10 years to build a nuclear power industry from scratch. Today, this nuclear power plant, which I had the opportunity to visit in 2023, is supplying 25% of the UAE's grid. This is incredibly impactful. But again, the nuclear power industry is very flexible in the sense that it's not limited to these very large-scale, very expensive nuclear power plants. The industry has flexibility through technologies like small modular reactors, which at maximum is a third of the size of a conventional nuclear power plant. And even smaller microreactors that can fit in the back of a tractor-trailer truck. Now again, these designs are modular and can be factory-built. And generally speaking, the factory is a great way to build efficiency and economies of scale. Why? Because solar panels, batteries have shown that beautifully. Between 2010 and 2020, the cost of solar dropped by 85%. And it's not because the construction crews on the ground got better at installing the solar panels. It's because the module producers became extremely efficient at manufacturing. So these technologies, first of a kind, they start out being very expensive. You start to build them out. More efficiently, prices will drop. And so we've seen that there is a demand for 24/7 energy, particularly for fueling industrial processes, whether we're talking about data centers, mines, desalination, hydrogen production. There is a need for 24/7 energy. And industries grow where demand meets supply. And that's where organizations like EPRI come in to help to solve some of those supply constraints. EPRI, the Electric Power Institute, is a not-for-profit research and development organization whose work spans all generation, including all energy sources. We're talking wind, solar, gas, nuclear, all energy sources, through to transmission and distribution, through to delivery. So our R&D supports technologies from when we first produce the electron all the way to when it's delivered. In particular, I am housed in the nuclear sector. And in the nuclear sector, we're focused on maintaining the safe, reliable, and economic operation of the world's current nuclear power plants, or the world's current nuclear fleet, while supporting the development, construction, commercialization, and safe operation of more near-term advanced designs. What does that mean? Our research and development portfolio supports more than 80% of the world's commercial nuclear fleet. And this is just a snapshot of a map that gives you a little bit more detail in terms of the countries that we engage with to support their nuclear ambitions. And we do have some engagement in Chile, in South America, excuse me. And in particular in Chile, our engineers collaborate with these partners to support grid reliability, transmission and distribution monitoring, generation flexibility, asset flexibility, and also asset assessment. So when a region is looking at potentially, or when a region is considering nuclear energy, and figuring out whether it's a good fit, engagement is key. Proactive engagement is key to be able to share information, build relationships, so that you can start to build up a technical capacity from early on. And that means developing the workforce. So with that said, EPRI collaborates with both industry and the government to build workforce in countries, and we do that by modernizing learner experience, centralizing and standardizing for efficiency and safety, and developing technically based, regionally informed training frameworks. And that's exactly the type of support countries like my home country needs to help to develop their nuclear portfolio, because Jamaica expressed interest back in 2022 that nuclear power may be something that they want to look at. And since then, I've independently gone back to Jamaica to develop these nuclear science and engineering education programs. And if you can scan the QR codes to kind of get some more information about what went on in those programs. But essentially, these educational programs invited technical experts from all over the world. We're talking about Brazil, South Africa, the UK, the United States, Canada, all coming together to engage with the students and to transfer technical knowledge in a way that is understandable and can be received by the students. Now, personally, I think it's important to develop human technical capacity in countries like Jamaica in an effort to build a critical mass of local talent in science, technology, engineering, and math, to inspire and empower the children because they are our future. So I'd like to end with a call to action, whether you're watching online or you're here in the audience. The industry needs bright, driven individuals. And you don't have to have a PhD in physics to contribute. All it takes is a willingness to learn and a passion to delivering safe, clean energy. The future of energy needs all hands on deck. So I really hope to see many of you out in the field, leading the charge and helping to shape the future of energy. Muchas gracias por tu atención.